Hello and welcome everyone to yet another webinar of our series called Global Career Launchpad, wherein we are delivering insights to all study abroad aspirants like you so that you can make the wisest decisions in your overall study abroad process. Today's session is about education loans. Now, it may not sound very exciting in the beginning, but I can challenge you that you may leave this session thinking more intently about it, as it can save you lakhs of rupees, provided that you are fully aware about it and you are able to take the smartest decisions possible. So, let's begin. First, let's build some background about the funding of education by getting to know the various sources of funds that you might have. Most people think that it only happens by spending all the money that you have in your bank, but there are other ways that you should know about. First is obviously the funds that you may have as a family. Your parents have worked hard in their lives and they have created a safety net, which is made up of some savings and some investments. And it can come to some good use if you plan to pursue your higher studies abroad. You can also deploy the money getting generated through active income sources like a business or even a passive income source like rental income. It's not necessary to fund the entire education budget using one single source because there are other sources to explore. Second is your own personal savings. So if you're a student who has had some work experience, hopefully you would have saved some of that money and it can be ideal to use in this situation. The third one is the source that is going to be the main topic of today's session, education loans. Unlike other loans that are available in today's time, these loans are highly cost effective, and I'll explain that further in this session. The fourth one is the one that people explore the most, which is called scholarships or grants. Most students expect that they should be getting full 100% scholarships and they would not have to spend a single rupee on their higher education abroad. But in reality, full scholarships are only given to the top 1% of the talent pool. Other students do get scholarships, and that is typically equivalent to anywhere between 10% to 50% of the tuition fee. These funds are either given by the universities themselves or other government or private institutions. We at Akshay Study Abroad Consultants assist our students in finding the right scholarship programs to apply to, and that does bring down their cost of education substantially. The fifth source comes after admission, and that is part-time jobs. As an international student in many of these renowned destinations, the government allows you to work generally around 20 hours per week while you are attending your university. These jobs can either be found on campus or off campus. Most of these jobs demand physical labor, like being a cashier at a supermarket or waiting tables at a restaurant. Some of them are sitting office roles, and you can get them provided that you have great communication skills and computer skills. These funds come to you at the expense of your time, but it is well worth the experience and it helps you earn for your living expenses. The next one is the one that most students like, internships and co-ops. Consider these as entry-level jobs similar to the ones you will pursue full-time after graduation. Some degree programs are designed in such a way that you would not be attending college for like a semester and you would be working at a company instead. These universities also help you find those internships. So if you are a STEM student, then you would likely get an internship role, which not only gives you great experience, but it also pays you really well. Finally, if you are going to pursue a master's or a PhD abroad, then you should be considering the opportunities of working as a teaching assistant or a research assistant at the university. If the university offers this job to you, you may also get a complete tuition fee waiver, and on top of that, you may get a monthly stipend. So, overall, there are several ways to fund your education before and during your degree program. Loans tend to have a very negative impression in many people's minds in our country. Most people in India have heard people in their family say things like कर्ज लेना पाप होता है, लोग कहेंगे कि लोन लिया है मतलब पैसा नहीं है, और एक बार लोन लोगे उम्र भर भरते रहोगे. Now, our family, especially our elders, are not completely wrong saying this. Back in the day, people have taken debt under very difficult situations, and it has caused suffering for them and their future generations. What people don't take into account is that our economy has gotten much more formalized than ever before. There are regulations in place that safeguard us consumers as well as banks. There is also an overall rising financial awareness among the general public. So instead of falling for these overly generalized statements, develop a very realistic picture of these financial tools and figure out how you can take advantage of it. In India, around two-thirds of students take out an education loan to fund their higher education abroad. This does not mean that they don't have the money to pay for it. They rather use it as a tool to maintain stable cash flow and avoid sudden financial stress on their family. Students are also quite strong-willed nowadays, so they don't want to put a financial burden on their family. This also makes students very responsible when they live their life abroad. The sincere and hardworking students tend to finish their education, then find a full-time job in a few months after they graduate, and what they earn, they start living with it very frugally. They save a substantial amount of it, and they use that money to pay back their education loan at the earliest. Education loans are also seen as an investment which reaps a return. Now, these returns are not just monetary returns, but it also has several life lessons for students to live by for the rest of their lives. There used to be a time when studying overseas was only a dream of students coming from metro cities. But now, this dream is not just of students from metro cities, but also from students from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So, an education loan has acted as a financial equalizer so that talent across the country gets the same pedestal. I am not a financial advisor, but I have seen several people around me taking very risky financial decisions. So I can at least tell you the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is money borrowed to build an asset. The asset can be a real physical asset, it can be real estate or a business, or it can be non-physical assets like your own education and lifelong learning. Bad debt, on the other hand, is money being spent merely for consumption or just to seek status in the society. So, buying overly expensive smartphones, gadgets, luxury goods, or dream vacations might give you that short term joy, but it can give you long term pain, which can be very expensive for your future. Defaulting on such loans leads to a massive decline in one's credit score, and it becomes harder for that person to take credit in future life. These kinds of loans also push people into what's called as a debt spiral. It's something that no one should wish on anyone else. Now, let's understand the approximate cost of studying abroad as of how it looks like in 2026. If you look at these numbers, you would find that there are some countries like US, UK, or Singapore that look relatively expensive. However, there are other destinations, mainly Europe, that look very lucrative because they come at a very low cost. Now, if you're a smart decision maker, you would not pick a destination just because it's cheap. You must also consider other factors like duration of the program, post-study work opportunities, and career prospects after graduation. We as Indians are very price sensitive. We see something with a low price tag and we are very likely to buy it. But when it comes to study abroad destinations, you should have a value-based approach. This is also why institutions like Akshay Study Abroad Consultants exist, so that we can help you make the right value-based choices. There are also people who might have two possible and very divisive reactions after looking at these numbers. You might either panic a little bit and decide that we can't afford this, or you might be so into the process that you might be thinking about liquidating your assets, selling your gold, real estate, or giving away your retirement savings. Now, both of those extreme reactions are not financially healthy. Liquidating your assets, especially, can jeopardize your own financial security. So, what you need to find is a concrete, stable median between those two reactions. So, before we understand how to get an education loan, let's understand why an education loan is actually a smart financial tool available for you that you can use even if you can afford it from your own pocket. First, your fixed deposits, provident funds, your property, gold, all of that becomes your family's safety net. So if there is a sudden medical emergency, a job loss in the family, or there is a family obligation that requires you to spend money, then you can easily dive into these savings. So don't drain all your savings for education when a structured loan product is available at very reasonable interest rates. Secondly, students who go abroad are generally in their early 20s and they have no credit history. So a well-managed education loan that gets paid on time builds a very strong credit score. And that is the foundation for your future loans that you would take that would build your life later on. So it could be a business loan, a home loan, or a car loan. So think of it as a financial foundation for your future. Third is the one that applies if you are paying taxes under the old tax regime. 100% of the interest that you pay for an education loan can be tax deductible. And the best part is that there is no upper limit for it. So all the interest that you pay to the bank can be considered as a tax deductible, and that's basically money coming back to you. And you can do that for up to 8 years. So it saves up a substantial amount of money. Lastly, when you get a loan sanction letter from a bank, it proves two things to the country that you're applying to. Number one, you have enough funds to study. And number two, you have skin in the game. You have taken calculated risks. You are showing your commitment to enter the country, work hard, and make a good living. So embassies and immigration authorities love that quality in the application. It actually strengthens your visa application. So overall, don't consider education loan as a financial burden. It's a very strategic financial tool. So let's make sure that we treat it that way as we move forward. Now, when you would approach a bank or any other financial institution, they would offer you two kinds of education loans. One of them is a secured loan. In simple words, you would use your current assets or savings as a pledge against your borrowings. These types of loans usually come at lower interest rates, but it also needs thorough documentation and it can temporarily restrict yourself from your pledged assets. On the other hand, unsecured loans do not need a collateral. If you are going to get into a top university and you have very strong prospects after graduation, then the bank wouldn't mind giving you a loan without you being asked to show some assets. The interest rates in unsecured loans are a little higher, but that comes with very simple documentation and you continue to retain full ownership of your existing assets. Now, let's identify and compare the top institutions which offer education loans for higher studies abroad. First one is the favorite choice of most Indians, public sector banks. This category includes big names like State Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, and Union Bank of India. These banks are mostly trusted and they offer very low interest rates. However, their documentation process can be lengthy and time consuming. The loan amount would also be insufficient to some students as they tend to generally cap their loan amounts to a 40 to 50 lakh range. The next one is an emerging option, which is private sector banks. This category includes brands like HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, and many more. These banks are very prompt with their processing of loan applications and they offer a lot of convenience to students and their families. So some banks would also offer you to come to your home. They would sit and explain the entire process to you. They even offer you the convenience of collecting documents from your home rather than you visiting the bank many times. They offer low interest rates if you have a very healthy credit score and if you are very strong academically. Their interest rates can be slightly higher than public banks, but their service throughout the process, be it the application of the loan, the dispersal of loans, and even your repayments, would be a very smooth process. And that is why we see that many of our students are preferring this option. The third category is not so commonly preferred, and that is NBFCs or non-banking financial corporations. Some common education loan providers in this space are HDFC Credila, Avance, Incred, and many others. These institutions are not that strict in their loan application evaluations, but they tend to offer loans at relatively high interest rates. So you should be a little careful. Ultimately, you must explore options across these categories and then pick the one that gives you the best value proposition. Financial institutions are willing to fund your education, but they have a clear demarcation of what they can and cannot fund. Education loans typically cover full tuition that you would pay to the university, whatever the university invoices would state. If you are going to have accommodation or hostel nearby, then you can get that covered in your education loan as well. If you have other expenses like exam fees, library fees, if you have travel expenses to that country and back to India, then that can be covered as well. Some loans even offer you the option to cover a purchase of a device like a laptop if it's required as a part of your course. You can even cover other small expenses like books, equipment, some study tours, or even health insurance premiums abroad. Now, what they don't cover is anything that would come as a personal expense or a lifestyle expense. So it could be anything related to entertainment. It could be anything related to your repayment of other debts, or it could be some investments or savings that you would be doing personally. One big mistake that students make in the application part of loans is that they only estimate the loan amount considering the tuition alone. So you need to budget beyond tuition and consider these other living costs. Under borrowing might feel safer when you're applying for a loan, but it can cause very severe financial turmoil while you are living abroad. So always borrow the full and realistic amount and make sure that you cover most of those education related expenses. And in the application process, make sure that those expenses are getting covered from the bank and you have that clearly communicated to you in writing. Now, let's talk about timelines. As soon as you get an offer letter from the university, start approaching different kinds of banks and financial institutions. Compare lenders of different kinds and initiate applications with the ones that you like the most. Submit complete documentation as soon as possible because banks need time to process your documents. If the bank approves your application, you will receive a document which is called as a sanction letter. Submit this letter along with other documents for your visa application. Once you get your visa granted, you are ready to fly and you can also start collecting disbursals, which would generally be the first payments to the university. And that would make you ready to fly. Now, there are a few points to remember once you receive a sanction letter from the bank. First, keep all the loan documents safe, all at one place, preferably here in India. You can use those documents for your visa process and eventually down the line for your income tax filing purposes. Second, don't miss your loan payments or you will be inviting late payment fees and it will also ruin your credit score. You must set up an auto debit process and ensure that you have enough funds in your account so that you can continue paying regularly towards your education loan. Third, if you get a scholarship after your admission or if you decide to switch to a better university, make sure that you contact your bank as soon as possible. This ensures clear compliance with the bank and you would avoid any difficulties with them later on. Fourth, keep track of the bank dispersals. Check if the bank is releasing funds on time, especially when you need to pay to the university. Lastly, build an emergency fund abroad as soon as you begin earning there. You may start with a very small amount. It may not feel like a lot initially, but it will be really helpful to get out of a cash crunch, especially when you're living abroad. When you apply for an education loan, there are some documents that you need to keep ready. The first set of documents would come from the students themselves. Now, this mainly involves your admission offer letter from the university, your basic documents like your PAN, Aadhaar, passport, a passport size photograph. Some banks also offer you lower interest rates based on your test scores. So if you've taken exams like GRE, SAT, or IELTS, keep those test reports ready to submit. You may also be asked to submit your high school or graduation mark sheets. Your university would have given you a document that clearly breaks down all the payments that you need to make to the university as far as your tuition is concerned. And it would also have an estimate of the living costs if you live in or around the campus. So submit those documents to the banks because this will help the banks to decide the loan amount and a clear payment structure. If you're applying to some countries where the visa gets granted automatically along with your admission, then you must submit those documents too. Next is a set of documents that come from the co-applicant. This person is typically your parents or your siblings. You will need to submit their ID documents, their income tax returns, bank statements, salary slips if they are an employee, and business related documents if they are self-employed. If you wish to apply for a secured loan, the bank will ask you for collateral documents. This includes either your property registration papers, property tax receipts, uh, the building plan, or in some cases, it could also be your FD receipts if you want to show bank FDs as collateral instead of real estate property. After you've taken an education loan, you obviously have to repay it eventually. But there is an interesting component in the repayment structure, which is called as moratorium period. This is essentially a time that you get to complete your studies and not really worry about paying back your loans right away. So this period is typically the duration of your course plus a grace period of anywhere between 6 months to 12 months so that you can find a steady job, a job that you like, so that you'll be able to earn regularly. Now, most of the people make regular monthly payments to the banks, which covers the principal amount, the amount that you have taken as a loan, and the interest. But if you want to avoid paying a lot of interest to the bank, you can choose to begin paying the interest during the moratorium period. So loans by nature are generally front loaded, which means that most of what you begin paying initially is interest. And gradually, the interest amount reduces and you begin paying the principal amount more. So if you begin paying the interest amount during the moratorium period, your loan amount does not uh, does not compound over time and your interest payments become smaller. Banks also see this as a sign of trust that the person is financially capable and is willing to pay back the loan as early as possible. Now, uh, this allows a lot of students to prepay the loans and even close the loan account well before the decided tenure. All you have to do is just make sure that when you are negotiating the terms with the bank, you do not have a clause that applies prepayment charges. So when you discuss repayment options with your bank, they would give you several options. First is the standard fixed payment, or as people call it, the EMI. Now, this can start right after you take the loan, which means that you might begin repaying as you start your university. So if you are someone who is financially capable, you want more predictability and stability in your payments over a long period of time, then this could be an appropriate option. If you are willing to finish paying early, then you can choose step up in your payments regularly. Select this only if you have very strong conviction that your income is going to gradually grow over time. The third option is actually the most common, wherein the student does not need to pay anything during the moratorium period, and they then begin paying a fixed amount which covers the principal as well as the interest. The fourth option is for the ones who want to save in interest payments to the bank. You can begin paying small amounts of interest while you are studying and working part-time. The part-time work helps you generate a little bit of income, which you can use to not only fund your living costs abroad, but also pay the interest amounts. This allows you to close the loan early and pay less interest overall. So ultimately, when you're making decisions for repayments, understand your financial situation and make decisions accordingly. While applying for an education loan, make sure that you are negotiating the terms well and clearly with the banks. And you at your end should make sure that you have leverage in your application. So if you want to increase your chances of getting your bank loan approved, you should ensure the following. First, have a strong academic background. Apply to top ranked universities, try to get admission offers from those universities, and that would help you in increasing your approval chances. Banks and other financial institutions look at the latest QS rankings or the Times Higher Education rankings when they scrutinize your loan applications. So if your university falls under the top 100, top 200, or top 300 universities, you would have a smooth sail. Second, apply to different banks and institutions simultaneously. I have seen several students missing their visa deadlines because they apply to one bank, they wait for the approval. Unfortunately, they get a rejection, and then they start looking for other bank options, and then they start the cycle again. So instead, you should apply to 2 to 3 banks simultaneously. Whoever accepts your loan application and gives you the best offer can be taken ahead, and this will save your precious time. It will avoid a lot of inconvenience and frustration. Third, your co-applicant, who is typically your parents or your siblings, they must have a clean credit report. So if they have missed an EMI payment in the past, or if they have been a guarantor for a loan, but the loan did not get paid, then they would have a low CIBIL score as a result, and their report would show these red flags. So avoid these things as much as possible. Fourth, if you are someone who has gotten really good grades, apply for scholarships that you are eligible for. Even if you get a very small scholarship amount, it's fine. You should show it to the bank because when they see that, they have an impression of you as a meritorious student and they will not hesitate in giving you an education loan. Fifth, prefer unsecured loans over secured loans. It might not sound logical at the outset. However, when you think about it, it actually can be a smarter choice for you. So you may have assets to show as collateral, but that limits the funding that you may get from the bank. Most banks consider a ratio called LTV, which stands for loan to value ratio. So if you show assets to the bank which are, let's say, worth 50 lakh rupees as collateral, then the bank would not give you 50 lakh rupees as education loan. Instead, they would consider a loan to value ratio of maybe 70% or 80% of that 50 lakh value. And you might only get an education loan granted of anywhere between 30 to 40 lakhs. So a better option is to get an unsecured loan because the loan amount is decided based on the cost of your education and not based on the collateral value. Finally, keep all your documents up to date and it should be ready to be shown to the banks whenever needed. Majority of loan applications get rejected because the bank asks for those documents and the applicants start rummaging around the pile of documents. If they find their documents, that's great. But sometimes it's also the case that they find the document and the document is out of date, so it needs to be updated, and that takes up a lot of time. As a result, the documents don't get submitted and the loan application gets rejected. So at Akshay Study Abroad Consultants, our counselors ensure that students have these documents ready well in advance so that they can avoid these silly errors. Talking about silly errors, there are a few other mistakes that you should avoid with your education loan applications. First, some students and the families tend to stay on the sidelines with their education loan process. They basically delay their action and wait for the visa to get approved before they approach or go to a bank. Now, waiting until the visa approval to start the loan process means that you've lost anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, and that's time that you cannot afford. Remember, time is of the essence. Time is money in this point in your stage. Next, borrowing only to pay for tuition is not a safe bet. Consider other living costs or a mid-semester financial crisis is very likely to happen. Next, don't ignore the processing fees. If you read the fine print, there might be some sort of insurance bundled with it. There might be a clause of prepayment penalties. So read that fine print clearly. If you don't read the fine print before signing, you would end up spending anywhere between 1 lakh rupees to even 5 lakh rupees just in these hidden costs. Next, don't apply to only one lender at a time. In this way, rejections will set you back weeks in your timeline. In some extreme cases, you might even have to defer your admission. Next, prefer paying the interest during the moratorium period, or it would add up, compound, and you would end up spending lakhs more than what you would have. Finally, don't confuse a sanction letter with the actual disbursement of money. The letter that you get is basically a promise that the bank is willing to pay you for your education expenses. The money from the bank arrives in tranches, and that would be small packets of money that would be paid at a certain schedule, and that is mainly dependent on the timeline of university payments. So make sure that you understand those timelines and plan your actions accordingly. At Akshay Study Abroad Consultants, we make sure that our students are making smart decisions, which gets them to save money substantially compared to someone who would do the entire process by themselves. So with our test preparation training, we encourage our students to take exams, the standardized tests, and encourage them to get high scores, even if the universities are not asking these scores for the admission process. This is because these test scores make our students eligible for several scholarships. Even banks are now offering loans at lower interest rates just because they have a strong merit in these exams. During our admissions and visa counseling services, we guide our students in finding the right match between destination, degree, and budget. This helps them find the most value-oriented options to study abroad. Our students apply weeks in advance, and that gives them the early bird advantage. This results in them getting the maximum financial benefits. For example, universities offer scholarships on a first come, first serve basis. So the ones who apply early get the best university scholarships in the form of tuition fee waivers. Once our students get their admission offers and their visas, we assist them in finding education loans with our strategic partners with banks. Our students get preferential treatment, and we ensure that their process is not falling behind time. So we assist them in the overall process, and it also covers other activities like finding accommodation, flights, foreign currency exchange, and even these processes are done in a way that we help them save lakhs of their hard-earned money. So that brings me to the end of this presentation. I hope you found this insightful. If you would like to inquire about our training and our counseling services, feel free to contact us on phone, email, or visit our center at College Road, Nasik. If in case you need detailed assistance regarding your test preparation, university applications, visas, or any other part of the process, be it education loans, accommodation, or anything that would help you in the process of pursuing your higher education dreams, do let us know and we would love to help you guys out. So that is it from me here. Thank you for attending the session. Goodbye.